This is WZRD Chicago 88.3 FM. And we have with us Kenyuata Hester. He is a law student or a aspiring law student, and he would like to share his experiences with us. Kenyuata, welcome. And could you first tell us uh, how did you aspire to study law?
I think it came from just a overall awareness that the law has a profound impact on all of our lives, day-to-day lives, no matter what we do, from the water that you drink, the air that you breathe, the clothing that you wear, and also how you're treated when you walk into a store or if you are in a situation, maybe you have a brush with the law, you're arrested, how you're seen by people. But it's always been from looking at the Constitution when I was a kid. My sister brought home a book of the Constitution, and I read it, and I just knew I wanted to do something with that because I just felt like it was profound.
Mhm. What did you feel that there were some injustices that you had to address using the law?
Absolutely. So I come from a background in community health. I'm a community health worker. I was a community health worker prior to entering law school. And absolutely, you see it every single day. Let's take Terry versus Ohio, a case in which the Supreme Court basically said stop and frisk was a policy, and how discriminatory that was towards people of color, or minorities in general. There's other policies. Look at where we're arguing right now in the Supreme Court with the Voting Rights Act to see if race can be used in the drawing of districts, congressional districts. So you can always see, if you go back even to Plessy versus Ferguson or Dred Scott decision, which basically said that a free man that had escaped slavery in the South and ran to the North was still property, or what you call in property law chattel, and he had to be returned back to his owners in the South. So you can always see a correlation between where the law has been in the past, where it is now, and how it's sort of shifting back to what it used to be in some respects.
So where were you? Where were you? In Ohio when as a community health worker?
No, I was in Chicago, so I'm from
Oh,
Chicago.
Chicago.
I'm a
Okay.
graduate of Northeastern Illinois University.
Oh, yes, we're alumni. We're
Yes, yes.
fellow alumni.
We're
Uh,
fellow alumni from Northeastern. I graduated last year in December with my
Thank you.
bachelor's. So
Mhm.
yeah, most of my life experience has been in Chicago, and I've had
And what
instances.
was your degree? What was
Pardon
your
me?
degree? A bachelor's in what?
A bachelor's in interdisciplinary studies with a minor in health promotion.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. Go ahead.
And so most of my experiences have been in Chicago. I've been one of those young kids that has been targeted by the police or profiled by the police. I can think of instances, even in, let's say, like Boys Town. I'm walking down Boys Town and just doing what naturally just having some fun. And police making comments like, hey, be quiet, shut up. These are white people. This is the North Side. This isn't the South Side. Go back to the South Side with that. Or these white people have to go to work. This isn't out South. Or comments like that. Or even comments where you're with a person that's non-minority and they'll say, hey, we expect this behavior out of you, meaning the black person or myself, but not out of the white person. And you see those type of disparities and those type of prejudices that go on even to this day. Um,
Isn't that illegal or discriminatory for them to actually say that? Is it that you could file a complaint against that, could you?
Yeah, I mean, yes, you can. And the problem is you can file complaints, but typically the police themselves. You have to remember it wasn't until recently that we had a consent decree in Chicago uh, that sort of put things, a little bit better for people of color. It wasn't very long ago that we stopped doing the stop and frisk in Chicago as well. But I mean, you can actually go anywhere. Right now, currently here I'm in Delaware, and you have instances where people are prejudiced or maybe racist. I won't say they are, but potentially. But you can still see those type of biases play out no matter where you are in the country.
So what is it in Delaware compared to Chicago, would you say?
I think that, well, it's a beautiful state, and I'm not going to knock Delaware.
How long have you been in Delaware?
I've been in Delaware since January. So I came here. I started law school in August. So I came in January just to get a feel of the state and see where I was at and what's going on here. And I would say for the most part, there's a lot of good things here. But I think on the flip side of that, Chicago's a much more, or Illinois is a much more progressive state. So whereas, we have more resources dedicated to, helping people and improving the condition of people's lives, Delaware is more of a business focused place. And I think that you can see sort of disparities sometimes just in the neighborhoods and how the neighborhood makeups. And it was a cultural shock for me. Obviously, I've seen, those type of things in Chicago, but never not to this degree, or maybe I just didn't recognize it. But there's definitely a divide here, by race and not by economic, situations. I'm not going to say that it's, a state that doesn't try. I just think that it has a long way to go. And maybe some of that is because they've had a population influx because one reason or another, they have no taxes, sales tax here. So that's kind of good. In Chicago, we have high sales tax.
Yeah. What about the income tax over there? What's that like?
Well, I really haven't really worked here that much, so I'm not sure about the income tax here, but I know the sales tax. There's no sales tax here, and that's the benefit. And I will say there are people here, at least at this university, that the professors, they really believe in you, and they're doing everything they can to teach you and make sure that you get the law, and become good lawyers. And they have a lot of connections, here in New Jersey, Maryland, Delaware, obviously, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. But like most private universities or most law students, there's a high cost to education. And so, whereas maybe a public university or other universities may be able to waive fees or help you, that's not always the case here. And so, that's my particular problem. Um, and I'm trying to close that gap. But this is a gap that many minorities feel. People don't realize that, just to get into law school, it may take thousands and thousands of dollars just to prepare for the testing, or application fees. So
How much did it cost you to prepare for the test, LSAT?
for me, fortunately, because I was in Chicago, it's at NEIU, I was able to get a waiver. And so they had Con as part of the LSAT package when you get a waiver, and Con is pretty good. But for some students, that's just not enough.
So what is Khan? I don't understand it.
So Khan is a learning platform.
Oh,
And so what it does is it gives you little mini test on what could potentially be on the LSAT test is what you need to LSAT to get into law school. And you need basically a score of a 150 or higher. The higher your LSAT score is, the more likely you are to get scholarships or merit scholarships.
mhm.
But you have a disadvantage there. So most minorities are first generation students, and they probably don't have the financial resources to get tutoring, or to get test prep, let alone to put together an application or fees that they may need for the application or just to take the LSAT. Because when you do get a waiver, you get it as good for 6 months, and I think it's two tests that you get out of it. Some people take the LSAT maybe two, three times to raise their score to get a better chance, or to get a chance to get into a better law school.
How about you?
I took it twice.
Mhm,
I took it twice. And after the second time with the waiver, I wasn't going to take it again.
mhm.
It's not the best test in the world, but even that, they found flaws in that testing. You had the logic games on there, which is hard for a lot of people. And I'm not saying just because the test is hard that you should make it easier, to water down who gets into the school. Absolutely not. What I'm saying here is that when you have one segment that is better prepared financially than another segment, that creates disparity right there. I mean, I think that's kind of bad. And I think the other thing is you have to look at is that the legal field needs to represent the people that it serves. So when you're not seeing people that look like you sit at a table, they're not in those meetings, drafting those laws for those legislatures or helping those judges write opinions or doing the research, then you tend to not believe in the legal system and you tend not to turn to it. Oftentimes, people just don't know what their rights are and they can't afford to go find out what their rights are or how to take care of everyone's rights, what to do about it. Many legal aid societies are overwhelmed, underfunded. Public interest law is not the best pay, and it's something you have to have a passion for. And some of those organizations just aren't equipped to help people with the needs that they have. I think that one thing I do like about our state, Illinois, is that you do have schools that cost maybe $25,000. And that's not my case here. Mine is more than twice that. And you have some schools that are trying to bridge that divide, so that more students can get in. But there's a lot more work that needs to be done
So more than twice that for a year or for a semester, for a year?
for the year. So mine is at the average cost of attendance for a year is 60,000 or more. And plus I stay in a dorm here because it's just easier for me to do.
Mhm.
Then you have to provide your own food, transportation, things of that nature. You still have to, buy uh, uh, personal hygiene,
Groceries,
get a
yes.
haircut, right? Those essential needs that you need every day. And it's kind of hard to work when you're in your first year of law school because that's your most important year. Most of your career or a lot of your career can depend upon that first year because that's all, employers tend to look at is that first year.
Why? Why?
Yeah.
Why the first year?
Because the first year is a good indicator, they say, of whether or not you're going to be able to pass the bar. So, like my school is a very bar focused school. So they want to get you to pass the bar exam, which all lawyers have to do and want to do on the first time. And that's a good thing. But there's so much material that you have to digest. And for some people, it's very new. Some things
How
I'm
about for
familiar.
you? What's it very new?
A lot of it is. Most of it is. I mean, yes, I did some pro se legal work for myself in Chicago, and I have some familiarity with that. But it doesn't give me an advantage at all. Perfect example, we have to write an essay here for our exams in a certain way. And although I've done writing as far as a complaint in court or a motion or answer to something in court, I wasn't used to writing that way. I had to merge the two. And there's a lot of things that I just didn't know. It helps me sometimes because I can equate one thing with the other and say, okay, I get this. I get this concept. I get this principle. But that's not always the case. So you need to dedicate at least 2 to 3, maybe more hours a day per class. And then
Mm,
there's also classes where you have to do your legal writing, and that takes research, it takes writing, it takes style, it takes time to get the citations correct, and learn how to get your analysis correct. Because the most important thing is your analysis. You can have the rule right, you can have the issue right, and not have the analysis. And the analysis is what's most heavily graded here.
mm. Do you have study buddies?
I tend to study by myself. It's easier for me, and it's just the way that I study. It worked for me my undergrad. I have studied with people from time to time, but we have different sections. So you have section A through D, and a professor in the A section may want something very different for their exam than the professors in the D section.
What
Their teach
differentiates the different sections? Why the why A, B, C, and D?
Because what happens is where they get the competition in law schools, they put a curve, and so they have these sections, and so you're graded against your curve against your section,
Uh,
and then overall, I think overall against the entire cohort. So I think there was like 200 plus students that came in with me. So about 10% of them will not be here after the first year for one reason or another. And so when you are looking at how you're graded, you have to look at whatever the average is and see where you compare to the average, and that creates that competition. So it's easier to have 4 sections because you don't want 200 kids in one class or one professor. I think they'd go crazy and you probably wouldn't learn much. And so that's good. You get that one-on-one time with the professor to teach you, and I appreciate that.
mhm. Were you able to interact with the African American Bar Association for advice about getting into law school?
Well, no, my school, my undergrad did not really have an advisor. I mean, it had an advisor, but no, he was not African American at all.
Mm,
And he was some help, but really, I really just researched and did it on my own. I put together my packet and I put together my personal statement. Luckily, I was able to write that really well. And luckily, my grades were really good, really good. I graduated with a 3.63 GPA.
mm,
So I graduated with honors, and so that looked good. And I did have a background in public health, which ties advocacy ties into legal work directly because what are you doing? You're advocating for someone, for your client, or for this organization or this group. Me personally, I would rather focus on civil litigation. I'm not really the corporate law type person. And maybe because I'm older and because my morals and values are a little bit different than other people. And corporate law is fine if that's what a person wants. I applaud them. That's just not the route that I want to take. I'm more about standing up for people and leveling the playing field. And I think that goes right back into this discussion with the need for diversity in the legal field. The field needs to look like what the country looks like, what our
And how
communities
does
look
it
like.
look like now?
Well, I'll give you this. There are 1.3 million lawyers in the United States, around 1.3 million lawyers in the United States. Um, Out of that, less than 10% are minorities. And you can break that down to 65,000 of them or around there are African American. But if you take all minority groups together, you take a Hispanic or a Latino, you take African American, other minority groups, they represent less than 10% of the 1.3 million lawyers estimated in this country.
So in other words, 90% of the lawyers are white?
Yes, yes.
Mhm. And do you know if what the bar associations various positions are regarding this? Do they even talk about it? Do they have any? Ha, have you had any contact with bar associations and talked with people there?
Not direct conversations with them. I am a student member of a few bar associations, and I believe overall the American Bar Association is trying to have more diversity and bring in a more diverse group of people into the legal field. And I do believe that to be true. But the bar can only do so much. At the end of the day, um, you get $20,000 for financial aid, and then you can apply for a grad plus loan. But you have to meet certain qualifications. I did
What
not
kind,
qualify for.
what kind of qualifications?
So you can't have any negative information on your credit report. It's not really about your credit score, it's about what you have on your credit report. And I thought I had cleaned mine up, and I still was denied the loan. But even then, you have to. Most minorities leave with greater debt from law school than those who are non-minorities, and that's just the fact. You know, many people are able to have their family contribute. You know, again, when you go back to that testing for the LSAT, if you have tutors and you have much better preparation and you get a higher score, then you're more likely to get a larger amount on your merit scholarships. And so that'll help you. Conversely, if you cannot afford to get tutors and to continuously take the test until you get the score that you want, because you can take it as many times as you like, um, you
How
can't
much
raise
how
this.
much does it cost per time per try?
Uh, I, I, I can't. Since I had a waiver, I don't remember. But think it's between $200 to $400.
Okay.
It's not cheap to take the LSAT, but just the preparation alone can cost you thousands and thousands of dollars. It's a very long test.
And for you, what was involved in the waiver? What does the waiver comprise of? What did it waive?
What am I? What?
Waiver, your waiver that you got?
Oh, the waiver. So the waiver gave me the ability to apply to, I believe it was 6 law schools for free. And it gave me 2 tests, and it also gave me access to to do some prep. You can find some things you can go on once or twice for free, like a free trial, and use that. But honestly, I'll be honest, and it's not probably the smartest thing. I really didn't study for the LSAT. I didn't. Um,
Why not? Was it not enough time, or why did you study?
Well, one, I was finishing my undergrad at the time, and I took 62 credits in one year. With my program, I
Mm,
was able to bring in experiential learning from my work experience and
mm.
find a course that corresponded with that at the university. But that required me to write a course narrative, and that's this basically it's like an APA style report on, you know, where I learned this, how I learned it, how I applied it, and how it fits to this course, and to put scholarly support behind it.
Mhm.
So I had to prepare about maybe 10, 12 of those.
Mhm.
And I had to do it during the summer. I took five courses, spring, summer, and fall.
So you
In
weren't
addition,
able to work at that time then. It seems as if most NEIU students are workers and the part-time students, but you
yes.
seem to be you had to be like a double full-time student with that.
Yes. So I did not work at NEIU until my last semester.
Mhm.
And I worked in the gym and recreation building. And I'm grateful for that. I was also grateful for the good education that I got at NEIU. My two of my professors, Professor Voci and Professor Campbell, both lawyers. I was a pre-law major as well. And so through the my tenants rights program or tenants rights course, my workers' rights course, and my criminal law and procedure course, I learned a lot. And I will say that Professor Voce went out of his way to try and give us law school level education in those two courses, as well as Professor Campbell as well, especially with her having been a police officer before. So she would teach us, what the law said about certain procedures under criminal law and how police actually implemented or tried to circumvent that or used it. So that was valuable to me.
Mhm. So the way that you saw them, so how they like to circumvent it, you could apply that to your past experiences then.
Absolutely. I think that, learning there, I could point back and pinpoint in my life. Oh, okay, this is what was wrong. Because sometimes you know something is wrong or what you can't do. And what I tell people, if you think somebody did something wrong, probably did. When it comes to your rights, they probably did,
Right. It's on the flip side of if it's too good to be true, it probably is. And then this is like same thing, but flip side.
Absolutely, absolutely. If it's too good to be true, then it probably is. And then you also have to remember that even when let's take the criminal justice field, you know, perfect example. Let's look at the Sean Diddy Combs case. Uh, yeah, okay. So when you can spend millions of dollars on lawyers and have a dream team of lawyers, you can come off with two charges that are relatively carry less severity than the other charges, this RICO statute that they charged him with. But if I'm just Ken and I don't have any money, then, I can't afford an attorney to go in there and argue and get me a good deal or maybe get me off. I'm
That's a question that I've always wanted to know. Why are the expensive lawyers, the dream team lawyers, are so expensive? What do they do above and beyond with that the extra money that they charge?
Well, I can't speak for what lawyers do, but I think that what people don't realize is that one of the reasons why private attorneys tend to charge a hefty sum because the amount of research and writing that you have to do. The law is ever fluctuating, ever changing. And so what you're doing is you're taking and analyzing what this client is bringing to you, and you're applying those facts to what the law is. And you have to get that rule and that reasoning together and then make your analysis to make an argument to a court. And that takes a lot of work. I learned here just as a student, let's say I'm just sending a memorandum. The memorandum may look very simple, maybe 3 pages, but I may have spent 10 hours, 12 hours or days putting that memorandum together. So to make it look like that is, it's really simple and easy to read and you understand it. But behind the scenes, it's taking a lot of work. And I think that's what it is. That it requires a lot of research. It requires you to juggle many things at one time. It also requires you to be able to analyze and change and shift into whatever the situation needs to be. And like I said, the law is ever changing. What was precedent today or what was, work today that argument may not work tomorrow.
Well, you know that the DEI protections are under attack right now. So how does that affect you and the money that you need to continue law school?
I think that affects me directly. So, I have a GoFundMe page up, and I've had people make very, very rude comments towards me. One of them was about DEI. Um, I think the way that it affects you is when you're applying for funding, when you're asking people for to increase your scholarship, or you are trying to get that financial aid or whatever it is you're doing, maybe applying for a job, that plays into it. When you're applying for jobs at law firms or internships or clerkships, that can play a role into it. And I'm not saying that it's a conscious bias or a conscious thing to keep you out. And it may be for some people, and I don't think that's true of everyone. But I think that overall, when you take the system, it doesn't necessarily be that school. When you take the system and you look at it, it affects you. Going right back to my previous comment, when you look at how you take the LSAT and preparing, when you're trying to get funding, so you think about, the recent, like you said, attacks about the DEI. When you know you have these forces against you, a lot of places are shying away from trying to enforce or include DEI because they don't want to be on the wrong side of an administration or a person that's going to try and punish them. Well, then that would harm me, wouldn't it? That harms a lot of us. And it's amazing because I it's like this, you know, that stoplight that you stop at, stoplight that you stop at, think about who invented that, or that gas mask that somebody's wearing. Think about who invented that. Bioagriculture. Think about who invented that. Refrigerated trucks to transport your food supply. Think about who invented that. So it's always amazing to me that anyone wants to be anti DEI when our country is built on diversity, equity, and inclusion. We may not want to admit it, but it is. From the tacos they would like to eat for those Taco Tuesdays, to right down to the screen on your phone. Right down to Christmas or Halloween. These are not American inventions per se, if you mean that they are white America. And that's not to disparage anyone. I'm just saying this is the truth. There have been multiple contributions from many cultures in our country. Once again, I like me a Taco Tuesday. Certainly that's not an American invention. So I think it's always funny when we have these people trying to scream, anti-DEI, and almost everything that we do in this country involves some form of diversity, equity, and inclusion, whether we're consciously aware of it or not.
So now you're how many months into law school?
I started in August, September, October. So we're going to our third month. Yeah, third month. I'm in our third month about.
Okay. And now thinking back, it hasn't been that long of a time, but thinking back to your applying and being accepted and all that the whole process, what would you have done differently? Was there anything that you would have done differently that would have helped you improve your financial situation from what it is now?
Yes, I would have waited. I would have waited and I would have applied to schools more schools locally. Um, or I would have waited and worked over the summer in Chicago and then came here. I think I didn't, I thought I had my money budgeted out properly. Um, but there were expenses that I didn't know that would occur. And then on top of that, when I originally received my financial aid award or letters, it looked like to me that between the scholarship that I do have and the financial aid, that my tuition would be covered. So I wouldn't pay anything out of pocket. So that's what I thought. When I got here, I thought I was already here. When it was close to me getting in, starting. That's when I found out, well, hey, no, it doesn't. There's this $12,000 gap that you're responsible for. Uh,
What is that $12,000 gap and why did they tell you about it? And who did they tell
so
you about it?
part of that is tuition, and then also housing because I do stay in the dorm. And I thought that would be best. I didn't want to come here and get an apartment lease
That's
for a
more,
year.
apartment is more expensive, right?
Yeah, right. Then right, the apartment's more expensive because I pay rent. like gas, whatever, And for me, especially this first year, I wanted to be close to the university grounds because it's a good way to make connections with your co-students, with your, schoolmates. It's easier to come to events that they have for you, networking events. It's much easier to do it that way than if you're living a mile, 2, 3 miles down the way. You have to hop on a bus or hop on a train or drive. Cars cost money. You have to put gas in them. So I thought it'd be a wiser choice to come onto campus and stay here to keep my costs down.
Mhm. Okay, so if you had waited, yeah, you could have, you think you could have gotten into some of the more local schools, right?
Yeah, yeah, I could have, as I plan on practicing law back in my
Mhm.
sweet home, Chicago.
Did you apply to
Yeah,
the local schools at all? Did you apply to the local schools?
I think I applied to UIC and SIU. And UIC, I applied to the wrong semester. I applied to the spring semester, and very few law schools start in the spring. Most of them start in the fall. So I
Oh.
applied for the spring semester, which UIC only takes a very small cohort, and I didn't know that. So that was that right there. And SIU wasn't able to accept me at the time. But had I waited, there was still NIU or U of I that I could have applied to. Um, and I think that maybe um, because I had my family leave and moved to California, that I wanted a little bit of change to go somewhere else, and experience it. Um, but once again, like many students, or at least students that have my background, as far as I have a very small family. If very small family. I was not brought up with learning financial responsibility. That's not My mom died when I was 13, so that's not something we were really taught. Um, I just didn't anticipate things. I didn't know all the information. And you could say, hey, you go to law school, you should research, research, research. I thought I had. I thought I had researched, all the inevitable possibilities. And that just wasn't the case.
So
There were things.
what would you suggest? Like, who could have helped you? What, thinking back now, who do you think could have helped you, and how could such help be implemented for future students, so that they don't have to make the same mistakes as you did?
I think that one, I do, and I'm not knocking where I'm at. I love it. But I think that one, the school could have communicated with me a little bit better to understand, and they do provide materials. I think that maybe the school NEIU could have had an academic advisor that broke it down a little bit more to you, because I think that you get snippets and you don't really understand. And I'm not the only student that sort of came here and it was like, oh, well, guess what? You still have a bill. So I think that just basically one, lowering the cost. There's a lot of things that schools can waive if they chose to waive. And I know there's an argument to say if we do it for one, we have to do it for everyone. And yes, I get that. But also I think that if you have a number of students and they're facing that similar problem, that's something the schools should look at and say, hey, let's support our students also in this way. And I know that a private school, has to make money, and honestly, public schools do as well. But I think there's a way that you can support your students and invest in your students where you can take off some of that financial pressure, and they can focus solely on their studies. Um, Maybe for the past 2 weeks, it's been, okay, am I going to be here after this semester? Because it's very hard to transfer from one school to another with only one semester. Most schools would not take you with one semester. You have to start over again,
Hmm.
which is kind of hard because you already have a semester.
Hmm.
And
So how
that's
many
sort of
semesters would you need to have under your belt? 2 semesters, and then you could transfer back to
You have to
to.
have 2 semesters. You have to
Mhm.
have 2 semesters.
Mhm.
And there are some schools that may accept you with one semester. Your grades are what they're going to look at and make a determination. And also why you're transferring, and maybe financial, reasons will be something that they would accept. But it's also kind of a sad prospect because, once you're here, you're already making connections with the students here. Every student here is got a future colleague of mine because you never know where the law may take you. So you're making connections that may be all over the country. Let's say you do go to a big law firm. Some law firms have offices all over. So if I'm at Troutman in Chicago and I have a case and they have a client here in Philadelphia, then they may say, hey, go over to Philadelphia and here, somebody I went to school with here. They may be my supervising attorney or I may be theirs or whatever it may be. But, like again, there's only 1.3 million lawyers in the country. So, out of a country of 400 million, that's not really a lot.
Oh,
So you're bound to run into somebody in some way again.
well, you are, it is true that you made a lot of connections there, but even if you were to move back to here and start at law school here, you would be making new connections as well. And then, of course, then you have two sets of connections. And
Absolutely.
and,
Absolutely.
and And if you were to explain to these schools over here that you are transferring back because of financial considerations, do you know whether or not such a reason would be would as long as your grades are okay and that is your reason, do you have any idea whether or not they'll accept you over here?
So I've had that conversation with a school in Illinois.
Good for you.
And yes, it's possible. It's very possible. Uh but it would put me a semester behind. So
Well, you're
I would not be able to start in the spring. I would have to start in the fall. Which
well,
is what
what
I'm
if
trying. Hmm?
Yeah, well, what if you have two semesters under your belt and then you wouldn't be able to then just wait a bit and then start in the fall? That would still be uh, that would still not help you progress. You would be missing out on some part of the curriculum.
Well, no. So if I had the full year, if I once I had the full year, no, I don't have to wait.
Mhm,
But with the one semester, I would.
mhm,
And so right now, I'm operating under the belief that I'll do my whole first year here.
mhm.
Uh,
Yeah, that
and
sounds.
maybe my whole 3 years here. But yeah, I'm operating under the belief that I will be here in the spring. And I am trying to do everything I can to close that $12,000 gap, so that that would happen. And I believe that it's possible. But I don't hold all the cards. I wish that, one thing I loved about NEIU is that, when you're in a financial bind, the administration would bend over backwards to try and help you in some kind of way. Um,
That's true.
Not every school's that way. And so that's different. But I mean, it is what it is. Every institution operates very differently. And they operate differently for different reasons. And I get that. Um, I don't take it personally. It'd be so easy to do that. That is part of the world that we live in. Uh, it is what it is. I would hope that I could go, even if I only had the one semester, if that was the case, that I would still be able to get into a school for the spring. The problem is that every university or every law school has a curriculum. Well, your first year, your curriculum is set for you. But different schools take different courses at different times. So for me right now, I have legal writing, property, contracts, and torts. Let's say SIU may have that in the fall and in spring and not the fall, you know, whereas here we have that in the fall. So that's the problem because how we're going to put you in a class that we don't offer at that point.
You have the best choice would be to stay for the full year and then
Yes,
have that first year under your belt and then move to another school.
that would be my best. That would be my the safest option,
Hmm.
to not have a break in the education, and the training. That also allowed me to get, to know for sure um where I'm going to intern for the summer. And then the summer internships, typically you make some money then, so that relieves some of the financial pressures, some of the financial burden and gives you hands-on experience. And that's something that's invaluable,
Right.
when you have that hands-on experience that you've worked with an attorney or attorneys.
Well, even if you were not in a financial bind, you would still want that internship too.
Oh, I mean, I want it. I definitely want it.
Yeah.
That's like a law school, that's like a law student's essential thing to have.
Mhm.
You really need to have that. or you should have it, and I definitely want it. Uh, and I'm going to proceed as if that's going to be the case. For me, I'm trying to be the most positive-minded person, that things will work out the way they should. But my responsibility here is to just focus on my grades. You know, that makes it a lot easier. Good grades makes everything much easier for you.
Well, when I we've done interviews in the past, and we've interviewed Supreme Court Justice Joy Cunningham, and she mentioned that she wants to implement financial literacy for lawyers because it seems as if there are many lawyers that are in your situation that they went through school and then probably they accumulated a lot of debt, and they probably as like you going into law school, they weren't on the best financial standing. So she actually wants to get that information to disperse that information to the Bar Association and also I think through the Supreme Court as well, because they do a lot of administrative work in addition to casework. So I do suggest that you speak with her. We'll connect you with her and see if she has a little time to spare to advise you on what you might be able to do to help you, because she sees a lot of that, and she mentioned that she's very adamant about that. As a matter of fact, she wanted like an interview just on financial literacy for lawyers on its own.
Well, I'd be grateful for that. I remember when she ran for the Supreme Court, Justice Cunningham. I remember that. Yeah, I mean that I think that's so essential, especially when you have first generation students.
Mhm.
Um, it's very different when your parents went to college and they have a degree and they understand financial aid and how it works and what it does and doesn't do. When they understand, what changes when you're going to get a graduate degree. Honestly, really, I didn't know, and I may be a non-traditional student, but I didn't know. I'm thinking, okay, this is what I'll probably get for my grad school. I didn't know that they cut it down to $20,000 a year. I certainly didn't anticipate that they would change the nature of the grad plus loan program. But
How
as
did they change?
administration.
How did they change it? Was it agreed upon and then later afterwards changed because they had it in the contract that they could change it?
No, so for financial aid, you get, I believe it's $57,000 for your lifetime for your undergrad. Once you complete your first bachelor's degree, you get X amount of dollars for grad school. And that comes out to about $20,000 a year, $25,000 a year. What happened with the grad plus loan was there really was no cap on what you could get. So the Grad Plus loan is meant to fill the gap between whatever funding you have. So whatever financial aid you have, whatever scholarships you may have, and then that gap in tuition, which you have left to pay. So what happened recently was you had the One Big Beautiful Bill. And the One Big Beautiful Bill put a cap on new Grad Plus loans, specifically for law school and med school. So whereas you really had an unlimited amount of money that you could get, now it is $100,000 and that's it. And depending on what school you go to, that just may not be enough for some students. So there's that part right there. The other thing is, um, if you cannot qualify for a Grad Plus loan, let's say you could get a private loan. Some of these private lenders charge you an arm and a leg to get,
Exactly. So what qualifies you for a grad plus loan?
so once again, you cannot have any adverse credit
Mhm. Mhm.
beneath over $2,000 on your credit report. So when I applied, I think I had three things that were on my credit report. There was a vet bill for a dog that at the time I no longer owned. There was a cell phone bill and an electric bill that Commonwealth Edison insists that I owe them. And it's not that much, but I had already paid off almost everything that was on my credit just to try and qualify for the Grad Plus loan. So what happened was I was able to pay the $1,000 vet bill off or get it waived because I didn't own the dog. So that dropped me beneath the $2,000 threshold that you have to meet. Um, and so I sent them a copy of that payment and the payment for the ComEd and a copy of the credit report that it came from. So I appealed and I sent the information and I was still denied. So I was underneath the threshold.
Do you
I
know
was
why
where I
you were
needed to
denied
be.
then? Do you know why you were denied? Did they say?
No, they honestly, the government, they don't really have to tell you anything. They just told me I needed a cosigner or a guarantor.
Mhm.
Most people I know, first of all, asking someone to co-sign for you is a very hard thing to do for anything, even if you have a huge family. But again, we're going back to that barrier when you're a first generation student. Many times, let's say your mom works, as a housekeeper or a teacher or whatever it is, and they don't have the credit, to co-sign for you, then that's a problem right there. You have some students that they have parents that are able to. You have some people that their grandparents are able to, or aunts or uncles or whatever. But that's not always the case with first generation students. And unfortunately, most first generation students tend to be minorities. Um, we know just from history, there's always been an socioeconomic disadvantage for minorities in this country. That some can say it's closing. In some ways that's true. You do have more minorities that are getting college educations, getting advanced degrees, and moving on to upward mobility, and that is true. But just because you see more of it happening doesn't mean there's not a disparity that's still there. That's also true. Two things can be true at the same time. So I think that going back to Justice Cunningham, you know, sometimes you don't know what you're getting into because you're focused on getting your degree as a lawyer and what you're going to do on the inside of, on the outs the in the side of that, as opposed to being able to navigate through how to get to that end with the least amount of debt, and or stay in. Uh, because and avoiding financial gaps like I have. And these are very smart people. Everyone here in the school with me, they're smart people. No one here is illiterate or not smart. Everyone here is very smart. Some of the smartest people probably in the country. They are here. But that doesn't mean that what you don't know. What you can't anticipate. And you can research things as much as you want. And it doesn't mean that that's going to be the exact same situation that occurs in your situation.
Do you have fraternity brothers or any support with people that are in a position as you, same position, kind of the same position, and then you could share stories and share possible solutions. Just kind of strategize about how better to address uh, this financial bind.
Well, no, I never pledged a fraternity. I was a little bit too old for that. Um, I've talked to a few students, and some students are, they've been lucky to have co-signers. Others are still trying to figure out, but it's not like I go and ask everyone their financial situation in the school. Um, some may share a little bit of it, but most students here are younger than me. And like I said, I'm a non-traditional student. And so they have parents, that can help them. And many of them are students that have parents that have graduated college and have gone on to careers. Now, that's not to say that they're rich. That's not to say they're rich at all. But they're in a better position. Me, there's no mom to run home to. My mom died when I was 13 years old. My grandmother died, when I was in my 20s. So a lot of those figures that might be able to step up, just aren't able to. And other people that are still like, establishing their credit or fixing their credit, or they're doing that for their children. They have children, and they are co-signing for their children and trying to establish their children's credit. And so I get it. I understand that. Um, But I still think that for me, to me, that there's a lot more that can be done in the public sphere. There can be more organizations that really recognize this problem and try and address it. I think that more universities can look at this in a more strategic way. How can we, yeah, we provide a great education and we also need to make money, to stay open, to keep doors open. And I think that you can find, common sense solutions. Not to say that they don't, or they haven't worked with with organizations and provide scholarship information, but scholarships are very competitive. Um, I can write what I think is the best essay in the world, but there may be 1,000 other students writing essays for the exact same scholarship, you know. So there's no guarantee I can get it, no matter how many I apply for.
Mm.
So you have that. I think that, driving down the overall cost of education, period. Um, it doesn't mean that you're catering just to diversity, equity, inclusion. It means there's an investment in the future generations, our future leaders. Why saddle, even whether I was 20 or I was 400, why saddle people with more debt? Especially in a time where we have prices are sky high, inflation is sky high. So you look at it and you say, hey, get a part-time job. Well, that's true too. You're buying food and stuff. But that same pound of ground beef that would have cost me $2 a few years ago, maybe $10 now. So you also have all these other things that are intersecting with one another. And we have to look at that. So I think there needs to be some type of uh, public-private partnership in connection with the various bar associations and the various universities, various law schools to address this problem. Because at the end of the day, I feel like that, and I think this is something I've gotten just in my career as an advocate in public health. Um, when you are person-centered as opposed to business-centered, uh, you get a bigger return on your profit. And that's just my personal belief. I'm a firm believer that if you invest in people more and think about profit less, then you increase your profit because more people are attracted to you. You know, if I'm out there and I'm doing fighting a good fight and I'm helping people, and word of mouth, hey, there, I'll help you over here. It's sort of like, let's say you have a food pantry and you open one up and they say, hey, they give away filet mignon over here. Well, obviously people are going to run over there. If they give away this, they're going to run over there because they know they're going to get help or know they're going to get what they need over here. You can have 100 food pantries over there, but they're going to, of course, people are going to come there, but they know over here you're going to be treated this way and you're going to get this assistance to one-stop shop. Then people are going to go over here and it's going to be word of mouth. And you're going to be, yeah, can that have a negative effect? Possibly. But I think in this context, that the more you bring in, that also means the more dollars that you bring in because you're not giving away the education for free.
Uh, the schools that you were at, so the financial aid office did not explain to you in detail about what you need to know.
I, I think that there wasn't a clear communication soon enough. And I
Mhm.
think that since then, when I have gone there, it's sort of been like there's nothing we can do. Um, and once again, I guess on the one side, I get it, you know. On the other side, I don't, you know. And I think that maybe just the battle between where my roots are and where I am now, and between private and public. Uh, and it's not an argument of which one is better. It's what's better for you. What fits you is most important. So I think that, coming from an environment like NEIU, where they were able and they were willing to make a lot of concessions to get you across that finish line, to a place that, well, maybe we can't do that here, was kind of surprising to me because I hadn't experienced that. And I started my college education in a private university. I started DeVry. Uh, DeVry University, I remember was DeVry Institute of Technology a long time ago. But even there, there was a concerted and a uh, concerted effort to let's see how we can get you through this and keep you looped in. That's not to say that things may not be, in the background that I don't know what's going on. That may be true. But I think it's also
Do you
it's
mean get you looped into a career? Looped into what?
I think that also that it's kind of a weight, unnecessary weight on you when your real goal is to focus on your grades. I don't try and say that law school is hard, and that's not to say that it's easy either. But I think that when you say hard, that's a negative connotation. I would say that it's challenging, and you have to be up to the challenge. And I think in order to fight the best fight and to be up to the challenge, that you need to take as many burdens and problems off your plate as you can. And I think that when you have this, financial weight on your shoulders, that's a concern. That's a distraction. And I think it'd be much different if I was 20 years old and I really didn't understand, about debt and, all the things that I know. But I'm not a 20-year-old, so I know a lot more about life than some of my contemporaries that are here. And that's not to knock them, although I wouldn't want to be 20 again. It'd definitely be an advantage right now. But
So when you did you ask the financial aid offices and the people there, what else could I do? Is there any are there any resources for me? And then what do they say?
I've had those conversations, and once again, there's not really much that I know of right this moment that anyone can do. Now, if there's something going on that I don't know about, that's very possible. But as of this moment, from what I know, there's not much that can be done. Uh, and for me, that's like I said, once again, on the one side, I can understand that. But on the other side, I do not. And that may be that, once again, going back to my public health advocacy, I'm very client centered. I'm very centered on the person that's in front of you, more than anything else. And that just may be that thing right there. And I can't speak to how every other student is experiencing it. I just know that I don't know every student that has experienced or is experiencing what I'm experiencing now. Nor do I solicit to every student like, hey, what's going on with your, you know, we have enough to worry about here. We're not here for jobs. We are here for a career.
What about
And we
that $12,000? Is that the gap, or let's say you were to remain in this school for the entire year, and that would cost about $60,000. How much would you be in the hole for?
out of pocket, it'd be 12,000 for this semester, and then for the spring semester, it'd be about like another 10 or 11,000. So I'd be a good 20 to $23,000 in out of pocket.
If
And
you
then I
make
would
the
still
state.
owe, yeah, and I still would owe whatever it is for my financial aid. Like I said, I do have a scholarship that helps, that's broken. So like the financial aid is, after 20,000 is cut half for one semester, half for the other. And the scholarship is the same, half one semester, half for the other. So that, there's that. But I would still have, a gap going forward. Now, going from your 1L year to your 2L year, there's much more flexibility. You get to pick your classes. And you probably would have worked your 1L summer internship or clerkship or whatever it is and made some money there. Then you can also work more in your 2L year. Your 1L year, they really don't want you to work at all. Um, and I get it. So with your 2L year, you have more opportunities. And also here at this particular university, your 2L year, they can be increasing your scholarship depending on your grades. You can apply for a loan, that's up to $8,000. So there's more
How
ways to
much
help
would
you.
the loan be?
I think you can get for your second year up to $8,000 for a loan from the school, which is great. But I have to get to that 2L year. I'm still in that and in the first semester. So that's, and I guess I get it. It's after you've proven yourself with your grades, your track record, but you can make it past the first year. And like I said, I get some of that. But I think that knowing that the first year is your most important year, that it is, I would like to see schools put more resources into that first year. Because if we can get you past that first year, then that second year, you know how everything goes. You're more seasoned and you have more opportunities to help yourself then than in that first year. Because the first year, once again, is the most important year.
Mhm. And you're not able to work during the first year too.
They do not want you to work, but
Mm.
I mean, if you have a dad, you have no choice but to work as, but you can't, it's not like I can go work an 8 hour shift, from 9:30 or 10 o'clock, depending what day it is, to 4, there's class. I mean, there's a break in between, but that's sort of the time there. How you going to work? Well, I couldn't work an 8 hour shift. And then, where would I study? When would I have time to study? When would I
Mm.
have time to prepare? When do I have time to write? If I have to have a written assignment to do, a memo or something like that, or research I need to do. So it's kind of a conundrum that you're in. You can't dedicate yourself completely to your studies like you need to in that first year and go out and work an 8 hour a day job, And this is not back like 1980, 1990, where you can just go work a part-time at the job at McDonald's and that's enough. The cost of college, especially law school, has grown in some places exponentially, of course.
Have you ever researched other countries, the tuition situation there for attorneys, for lawyers?
Well, Germany, your education is free. So, I wouldn't know like from country to country. Some countries you get a free education, and like I said, once again, Germany, education is more of a right than a privilege.
So
Um,
do you know if the students there, are they a lot smarter than the students in the US?
um, I wouldn't say that. I would say that different countries value things in a different way. And their tax structures are in a very different way. So in Europe, you tend to pay more taxes overall than you would pay in the United States. However, you also get a lot of services there that we just don't get here. For instance, in other countries, healthcare is free. Um, so that's not cheap, So they tend to have
And
more
what
tax.
did you say about taxes in Germany? Are their taxes higher than in the States? Is that what you said?
Yeah, in a lot of European countries, your overall taxes are higher
Mm.
than in our country.
Mm.
However, when you put on balance, you compare that against the services that they may get. So let's take United Kingdom for a minute or England. When you have a child, in a lot of European countries, the woman gets not 6 months, she gets a year or 2 years off. And the father may get a year as well, of their maternity leave or paternity leave. Well, we know that's just not true here in the United States. That doesn't happen. In the UK, if you have a child with autism or cerebral palsy or something like that, hmm, they will pay for the care of your child. That's not a burden that you have to bear yourself. We know that's not true here in the United States, but it just doesn't happen. So you have those things that are just very different. And I think it's not a matter of intellectual capacity. Um, it's just a matter of the structure of the country. They are
I was
used to things.
just wondering, like if they had the free education and then everybody is educated, then on the whole, are they more educated than the people in the US? That's what I was thinking. I don't know if you had the chance to investigate this or
Well, I
not.
mean, again, I wouldn't say I would agree with that because you have a lot of students that are international students that come to the U.S.
Mhm.
Because whatever they're studying isn't offered there, or maybe a better education here. Like when I was at NEIU, we had a very big international student population, and many of them planned on going back to where the countries they were from, and I get that. They got a better quality education here. So, as an American, I will always say that we are second to none.
And
Uh,
maybe I think a lot of the international students they want that experience of living in the States and then learning about the States and then finding opportunities in the States as well.
yeah, I mean, yeah, there's that too. I think it's just a cultural thing. Um, and it's just based on the culture. And I think for me, you can tell the quality of a culture by what they value. And I think you can tell the quality of a person by what he or she values. And that's just something that I believe. So I think that in other cultures or other countries, they value things differently than we do here. And then you also can look at there are cultures that have been around much longer than, the quote unquote American culture. Our country's only, what, 200, 250 years old, compared to some countries that have thousands of years of history. So it's much different when you're still relatively a young nation versus societies that have existed for, you know, millennia.
So, what is your message, let's say, to elected officials and to organizations? You mentioned it in passing earlier, but what is your message to them? How could they help you? What needs to change, and what could they do to help you help students in your situation?
I think that one, more financial literacy, as you said, like Justice Cunningham wanted to put forth, but also greater public-private partnerships. Um,
And
that
you don't see any public private partnerships now?
Not that I know of, and I've done some research, and not to say there are scholarships out there, but I think that we can make it a way to go away from not necessarily get do away with the essay writing model, but I think that we can find a system that really hones in on needs-based and first-generation students. I think that it's something that we really need to focus on, and it's not saying that we're necessarily treating people differently. But first generation students are just that, they're first generation. And I think that we need that fresh perspective into the legal field and just into our academic field, period. And I think that we can do that. I think that we need to also have politicians or organizations like the ABA or other bar associations really work to get schools to understand that, hey, let's create a way where you can lessen that financial burden. Let's say you can extend it or draw it out, over time. So instead of saying that we want this rigid payment these months right here and there's nothing else we can do, let's soften that and say, hey, you have the whole 3 years that you're here to figure out something. You know what I'm saying? Because at the end of the day, if you don't pay, it still goes in your credit report and you're still gonna owe it. So I think it's a way that you can either lessen the cost or at least make a financial or payment structure that takes into account that every student situation won't be the same. You can get to the argument where you don't want disparate treatment and, be subject to a lawsuit where, because you're treating one student different than the other. I get that. But you can make a way where you have more flexibility. Where, okay, hey, if you can't afford, $1,000 every month, let's try that at 500 and stretch it out over time. Let's try something like that. I think there's always a way that you can provide more resources and provide more flexibility. And really focus on people. If you already have, a person that's in law school and their mom's a lawyer and their grandfather's a lawyer, they probably need as much help, you know. But if you have this person where, they're the first person in your family to go to college, they may need some more help. And I think that, it's not necessarily just trying to give preferential treatment to anybody. I think that when you level the playing field for everyone, you make it better for everyone. And I think that you can just, I think that what we need to do is, especially politicians, we need to properly fund education first and foremost. We need to properly fund our public universities. to make them more attractive to students. We need to look at the way that we have testing and application fees and the fees for things like LSAT and find a way to lessen those or to mitigate those costs. To mitigate the cost of tutoring to prepare for that test, so that students can focus on that. And we need to pass legislation or to at least work with universities to create a funding pool that everyone can draw from that really needs it. I think that'll be better. And once again, I think that we need to certainly think about just overall lowering the cost of education for students, especially for higher education. Yeah, you can say that nobody owes you a higher education, nobody owes you a higher degree, and that's fair to say. But don't you want people to go to school and to better themselves? Yeah, you should have some financial skin in the game where you owe something or you pay something. And I'm not saying that it should be free. I'm not saying, hey, all education should be free. That's not our American system. But I also think that when you level the playing field and you provide more opportunity and greater flexibility, then you add more value to your brand. And that's just the way that I look at it.
Well, Kenyuata Hester, thank you so much for sharing all these your experiences and your thoughts about how grad school, law school could be improved financially for students. Wish you the best of luck. And if our listeners want to contact you with advice or questions, how do you want to leave any contact information?
Yes, certainly. You can reach me at kenyuata29 at gmail.com or go to my GoFundMe page, Ken Hester, and you see me on GoFundMe. I would appreciate it. And then I would tell you that any dollar that you invest is going to be a great return on your investment.
And what is your GoFundMe page again?
You know what? I can include the link in the chat to you so you can
Okay.
put it on the YouTube.
Okay.
But
Well,
let me
just
pull it up
yeah,
right now.
just email it to us, and then we'll put it in the description of the video.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you so much, Kenyuata
All right.
Hester. Thank you.
You have a good night.
You too. Thank you.